Well, hello, good morning, and welcome to our latest Bristol Life Business Club, a discussion with several leading figures in the Bristol events sector, sponsored once more by Bevan Britain. Events are quite dear to our business, so we're going to find this very interesting as well. I think events are probably one of the last sectors to come back to full life, and so we'll be interested to navigate and to hear how these organisations have been navigating these times. We'll shortly be speaking with our panel, covering big upcoming events and insights into the sector, with Charlotte Geeves of Bristol Old Vic, Darren McKimm, Great Weston Ride, and Vicky Gardner, ZiaBia Events Consultancy, all, by the way, finalists in the Bristol Life Awards this time round. So we're discussing their events, how they're faring, what their prospects are, what advice they have for others, what they've learned, and how they'll be applying their learnings in real life when that occurs in the coming weeks and months. Please do send your questions in using the Q&A button below. You can ask anonymously or be named as you like. Do add your company name to your question, and please note, as usual, the Business Club is being recorded and will be on our Bristol Life YouTube channel later this afternoon. So thanks again to our sponsor, Bevan Britain, and we do look forward to being back in real life with business clubs in the autumn. One thing about that, I was hearing a story the other day that we know that business is done at the business clubs. There's one company who picked up a six-figure contract directly from a conversation over lunch at one of our business clubs. It's quite extraordinary. I just love the idea of us acting as a catalyst to bring people together, and particularly so from this autumn onwards when we can get back together. Let's have a few words from Rob Harrison, one of the equity partners at Bevan Britain. If Rob would like to step forward, we'll have a bit of a chat. Morning, Rob.
Morning, Greg.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, and thank you for inviting me just to say a few words as an introduction to this.
Yeah. The platform was yours, sir. So
excellent.
Bevan Britain's doing, and what's upcoming for you?
Yeah, okay, well, thanks, Greg. Firstly, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's event. Bevan Britain are one of the biggest law firms in the city. We've also been a long-term supporter of Bristol Life Business Club. We found this forum to be a really important way of connecting and communicating with the businesses in our location. And we've been delighted to continue our support in a virtual format throughout the changes we've seen over the last year. We've experienced firsthand the disruption to events, from rearranging our own seminars, adapting to this virtual world, to the postponement of a huge number of conferences that we as a firm nationally attend. These events in the past have been a major part of our business, and we've had to learn to adapt with the pandemic, providing us with significant challenges, but also opportunities that they to be more creative, perhaps, as to how we reach out to existing clients and new contacts. This creativity, we hope, will continue post-lockdown with a blended mix of face-to-face and online events. As a business, we're planning for the return of those face-to-face seminars and events. Details of those can be found on our website. So, Greg, it would be great to hear the views of our speakers today regarding what their events may look like in the future and their hopes for live events returning. So back to you.
Great stuff. And I think from Bevan Britain's point of view, what's your rough sort of chronology? Is it essentially get through the summer and business world starts over in September?
I think so. We tend to have a conference season that tends to go into full swing of late September through to the end of November. So I think there are hopes, and we have seen the organisers start to send out feelers for attendance at those events face to face. It really does depend upon the government's guidance, issued or to be issued in the next few weeks. And if we do come out of that lockdown, it's not just about attending the events; it's how you get there as well. And particularly the events in London, whether or not people would have the confidence to return to getting on the Bristol to London train, for example, or even getting on the tube. So I think there's still a number of challenges ahead for us.
And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you or our panelists to second guess what the government's guidance might be, but I think we're all waiting, we're watching each day with sort of bated breath. The broad consensus appears to be that we'll be continuing unlocking on the 21st of June, maybe not quite as black and white as was originally intended. But we'll see, it will emerge. I think the date is June 14th. We'll have a much better idea, but the direction of travel is quite clear, one hopes. To you, Rob, and to Bevan Britton, thank you very much indeed for your support for the Bristol Life Business Club. Thank you. Let's come on to some news from Bristol Life before we get going on our main event today. Please look out for the next Bristol Life Business Surgery with Interaction on 14th of June. It's about the changes to workplace culture, how to make your office somewhere that teams want to go to rather than perhaps have had to go to, which is what it's been previously. And it'll be fascinating for all of us navigating through these times. We'll take something from that ourselves at Media Clash. I'm sure many other firms will as well. Interaction are smart thinkers about workplace, physical environment, but also cultural environment as well. These business surgeries are very much a deep dive, bespoke exploration, showcasing companies' expertise through discussion. It's not presentations, it's discussion. Please do talk to us about how you might be involved if you wish to. We can all do with advice and of course, new business. The business surgeries will be continuing as virtual in the future, and they will have enduring value available on our Bristol Life YouTube channel. Talking of events, and it's going to be punctuating this part of today's events, which is significant to us and I hope to the businesses of Bristol. The Bristol Life Awards will be held on the 16th of September at Ashton Gate. Our finalists were revealed last month in a really singular grand reveal day. Over 400 nominations and many brilliant companies were shortlisted. The video of that you can see on YouTube, and you'll just get a flavour of the range of companies that are involved in the awards once more. We've also got a great roster of sponsors for the awards, led by our headliners, Marsh Commercial. I won't list all of them. There are many, many sponsors this time, which is really encouraging, and we're very grateful for that. If you're an ambitious company or one seeking to rebuild the business pipeline, or just plain proud to be a leading Bristol company, please do consider sponsoring, particularly I think this year. I think in all it's 17 sponsors have already committed, various other stuff is under discussion. And it's just that moment, and we are very proud of being able to do this, of bringing together everyone in Bristol, from the coolest of the indies to the largest of the local companies after this year of years. Another in real life event is on 12th of November, which is the Bristol Property Awards at Ashton Gate. Months and months of marketing, lots of lunchtime merriment and convivial business meetings. We know what that means. There's a launch for the Bristol Property Awards coming shortly. In fact, it's next Tuesday, the 8th of June, just to run through what's expected of those awards, all the need to know information. There is one more, which I'm very proud of that we're putting on, which is EntreConf. This is on behalf of entrepreneurs. They are absolutely central to Bristol and central to Bristol's continuing economic development. New ways of looking at the world, new business models, new services, products, jobs, new opportunities for advisors, investors, financial companies, lawyers, academic institutions, marketing agencies, and so much more. You know, it's quite clear that people love the power that entrepreneurs bring, the dynamism, the different ways of looking at the world. That's why we're launching EntreConf. The future is unwritten. It's our entrepreneurs conference. It's virtual this year on July 1st, and we then have big plans for subsequent years. And it'll be right the way through from startups to scale ups, and some may even be the subsequent futurecorns, the big breakout players, value players. The aim is to give profound insight, valuable inspiration, catalyzing partnerships, bringing together all parts of the value chain, and celebrating the role of entrepreneurs. Talk to us about being involved if you'd like, whether speaking or sponsoring. And I should say, one of our sponsors of EntreConf is Bevan Britton once more. And it's great how the professional services have come together behind this sector and of course provide such great advice. One thing, this just in, I haven't actually announced this, but I'll say it anyway now. Our keynotes include Dale Vince, idiosyncratic green energy entrepreneur and owner of Ecotricity. Dale also owns Forest Green Rovers with eco values from the wooden stadium to the players and fans' diets. I mean, it's another version of entrepreneurialism, which we'll be delighted to explore. We'll have exclusive research, practical advice for startups, and much more. So please join on July 1st. We've got a deal with our sponsors that basically means there are free tickets, limited number, free tickets right now via our sponsors on the EntreConf site. And yeah, the future is unwritten, so I was about to say, let's go out there and write it. I'm not going to say that. Let's talk about Bristol Life instead. The heart of all we do is Bristol Life. And we're really, really proud to publish a magazine that celebrates this incredible city. Have a look at this cover. This is our 300th, which was published just on Friday. And we had tremendous support. It felt, Bristol increasingly feels back across multiple sectors, and we're absolutely delighted with the support we've had from the businesses of Bristol. We did do a special thing, which I think we'll show a couple of here. We created separate covers for some of our advertisers. There's a big old montage there of some of them, just to say thank you. So that's they can push it through social, do what they wish with it. But we're very delighted with that support. We're here to celebrate the good stuff in Bristol. Thank you for your support. Okay, enough of us. Let's talk about you. Let's bring forward our events speakers. From grand days out, a long way to shows in, it's now looking like an exciting Bristol schedule this year. First up, we'll be hearing from Charlotte Geeves. Charlotte will step forward, Director of Bristol Old Vic. And Charlotte, just prior to starting, I'll just give, if people need to know about Bristol Old Vic, which I'm sure they know much of this, the oldest continuously working theatre in the English-speaking world, and that's a terrific claim. It happens also to be a wedding and event hire venue, heritage destination. Pandemic caused many theatres to shut down overnight, leading to many innovating, and Bristol Vic was one of those, clearly, reorganised events, virtual events. So Charlotte, how have you been, and what have you done in lockdown as an organisation?
So yeah, it's been a challenging sort of just over a year. We closed on the 16th of March, the day that Boris announced to the country that at 5 o'clock people should stop coming to the theatre, and we took the decision that evening that it was probably best for us to close. If the government was advising people not to come to the theatre, then actually morally we probably shouldn't stay open. So that night we cancelled our press night, which was for Red Lion, and we closed. Overnight we lost 75% of our income. Thankfully, we're very fortunate 25% of our income comes from the Arts Council and Bristol City Council, so we were supported still financially. And by the 1st of March, we'd put 87% of the organisation on furlough. We went through quite a large restructure and redundancy during the summer and lost 40% of our permanent staff and over 200 0 hours and casual staff, which was quite devastating for the organisation. But we also, within that time, decided to explore what we could do from a digital perspective, because whilst we weren't able to open the building and whilst we weren't able to do events in person, what we were really keen to do was make sure that people could still see content at an extraordinary and challenging time for people's lives. And we do passionately believe here in Bristol, at Bristol Old Vic and across the country, that the arts and entertainment is of massive value to individuals, particularly when they're in challenging times when they can't see other people.
Could I just ask you about that virtual point? The theatre, amongst many things, is as an experience from a seat that one is essentially static, looking out and across at the actors, of course. And that's my personal experience is different from yours in a different seat, etc., etc. When it comes to virtual, it's a multi-perspective view. And conversely, anyone watching shares the same experience. Have you had any feedback or any sort of views on how that has changed the way that creativity is absorbed, is experienced?
It's a really good question, actually. We reopened, obviously, at the end of this lockdown last week with Touching the Void, which is a show that we've done in Bristol twice. It's been in the West End. And part of our business transformation is about what can we do moving forward to sustain our business, particularly whilst we're still in this period of reduced audiences and reduced capacity, which is having a significant effect on our income that we are able to generate. And we, Tom said in the summer to me, right, I think what we need to do is explore live streaming and what does that look like, and how can we create a space for everyone who's sitting at home who can't access the theatre because either they can't get here, it's not safe for them to be in there because they're a vulnerable person, they can't afford to get here. How can we create an experience for them that similar to the experience that an audience get when they sit in Bristol Old Vic and watch a show? And so last week we did 4 in-person shows with an audience of 200 people, and we also did 4 live stream performances on each night to an audience of 750 people each night. And I must admit, I partook in both. I came and watched it in person and I watched it online. And it's a really interesting experience. It's a very different experience watching it online to being in the theatre. Obviously, as you've said, Greg, in the theatre, it's a shared experience. You're with a huge range of other people and you watch a show with a group of other people, and it's a great experience.
And the actors respond to an audience, and the audience respond to actors. You know,
absolutely. But online, what I found was that that show was just for me. And the journey that I went on as an audience member was just for me. I lived Joe Simpson's, breaking his leg and the extraordinary feat that he went through to get to where he got to and for him to survive. And it was tense, and it was like watching a film, and I was gripped in a completely different way, because the camera was directing me where I should look, as opposed to in the theatre where you can look everywhere. But actually, it didn't feel like I was losing anything. And what was brilliant was at the very beginning, Tom introduced the fact that there was a live stream audience there. So you felt part of the theatre, and the theatre cheered about the fact that there was a live stream audience there. And so you felt part of the experience, whilst even though not being in the experience. And actually, I think, yeah.
Right, go on.
No. I just think it's interesting that it's a different experience, I would say, watching theatre online. But it's enjoyable in its own way. Yeah,
and so a couple of points about that. One, very roughly, you charge for the live streaming. So very roughly, what's the difference in pricing the live streaming as opposed to live attending? And two, do you think you'll maintain that hybrid model going forwards for at least some shows?
So what COVID did, what the pandemic did, was we re-looked at our pricing structure when we came out of the first lockdown. We were first able to open in August. We weren't able to open the theatre, but we were able to open our bar and our foyer. And we decided to introduce a pay what you can model. So previously, there would have been quite a formal pay structure as to access the theatre and ticket pricing. And now it's much more flexible. So there is now a concession price to watch a show, and there's a standard price, and then there's a pay it forward price. And the pay it forward price, you can pay up to £100 for a ticket, but that also means that you can come and watch the show for as little as £10. And we've used that model, the same model, for our live streaming. So again, you can pay as much as you can afford, or you can pay more than you can afford, and that will enable someone who can't afford to come to be able to watch the live stream. And what we found is that actually that model's working really, really well. We're finding that the people who can afford to pay more, therefore enable the people who can't afford to pay as much to be able to attend, and the standard, basically it averages itself out. So the average ticket price to come and see an in-person in the theatre show is around £20 to £25, and the average price to watch a live stream is £15. But it's cheap. You can buy it for 10, or you can buy it for 100.
So very roughly 60 to 75%, excuse me, something like that as a differential between the two.
Yeah.
And you'll continue with that model for at least some shows, presumably.
Yeah, the plan is for the next year. We are continuing. We were very fortunate to receive Cultural Recovery Fund money from the government in the first round and the second round. We decided to invest that in activity and in purchasing cameras to enable us to live stream. And we want to do activity because we want to pay and invest in the freelancers who've been the hardest hit in this pandemic. They really have been. And so our plan is to continue with this hybrid live stream model for the rest of this financial year until March next year. And we see this year as an experiment as we tread.
And just see. Yeah.
Yeah, what has been brilliant was that last week we've discovered that 82% of our audience who watched the live stream of Touching the Void are new audience members to Bristol Old Vic.
Which is really encouraging.
And that's really exciting. And the age demographic has changed and become a younger age demographic who are experiencing theatre. And again, that's really exciting. And had we not done that, we wouldn't have reached that audience. We wouldn't have reached that age demographic. So there's definitely worth us experimenting and continuing to see whether the live stream hybrid model can work for us in the future.
But Charlotte, for now, we're going to come to a couple of our other panelists, but I'm sure many watching this will be thinking they admire the innovation and determination to pilot a course through in these times. So, well done, Bristol Old Vic, as ever.
Thanks very much.
Of clever thinking. So thank you, Charlotte.
Thanks.
Let's bring forward Darren. Darren, for the Great Weston Ride, sir. So this, for those who don't know, and I suspect you will do, 57-mile challenge, bike ride from Bristol to Weston-super-Mare, through the Mendips, across the levels, and you were still able to deliver that safe, enjoyable, successful event in 2020. How so? How did that happen then?
Quite a lot of hard work, Greg, I think, to be honest, and perhaps a bit of luck as well. I think we're fortunate. We are perhaps a bit of an outlier in this regard. We run 3 events, in fact, and we put 2 of those 3 events on last year. The one event in June didn't happen, but it is happening this year in 11 days' time, in fact. So all 3 of our events will happen this year. But we just, we had to keep tabs on what was going on. And as a sort of a smaller event, although there's over 1,000 people take part in the Great Western Ride, it was something we were able to be flexible with. We worked with a lot of local people and companies that support the event, and they were able to be flexible as well. We had a huge amount of support from the local councils, Bristol City Council, North Somerset Council, and also from our governing body, from British Cycling. We actually worked really closely with British Cycling to develop the guidelines and the guidance to enable cycling events, mass participations and non-competitive events to come back. So we helped to devise those guidelines. And we had to shift. Our event is normally in the middle of July. Again, this year it's on the 18th of Sunday, the 18th of July. But last year we had to move it. We moved to September, and it fell into that window where things had sort of settled down, and some activities were able to come back. Massively fortunate because it's entirely outdoors. Felt really sorry for a lot of other events, cycling and non-cycling events, that rely on sort of indoor facilities, because that was a real sort of showstopper for people, or everything we've always done. So this is where maybe it's a bit of good fortune, has been entirely outdoors. So that played a big part in enabling us to go ahead.
And when you reflect, when you have time, but when you reflect on 2020 and this first half of this year, what have you learned from that time which you'll carry forwards?
I think it's important to understand what it is you're doing as an event and how you're set up. I mean, we probably didn't realise how well we knew what we were doing and what we had. And as I say, some of the things we think we were lucky with, but maybe you make your own luck a little bit as well. We'd always planned for the event to be bigger. We planned growth from the start. So, this event, when it started 12 years ago, we had 200 people taking part. In a normal year now, we're looking at 1,200 people. Obviously, last year we had to put British Cycling at a national limit of 600 people, and that was the numbers that we had. We sold out to our capacity, our reduced capacity last year. But we'd always designed and thought about the event with growth in mind, and the event can go much bigger than the 1,200 that we would accommodate in a normal year. So again, that helped us significantly. The fact that we have local partners is a big issue, is a big important issue for us as well. Most of them were able to support us last year, but even now we see this year 2 or 3 of the people that have worked with us for a number of years aren't around to do it this year, unfortunately. So there have been casualties out there, but equally we've managed to, we've filled those spaces in our structure. So we've got suitable quality replacements in. But I know for a lot of other events, really, really difficult. And I think last year in 2020, certainly in the cycling world, if there were 6 events in the whole country that went ahead, I'd be surprised. And we certainly put 2 of them on.
Yeah, which is remarkable. Any concerns from your point of view or cautions about this 2021 iteration, how it might compare? Is there reluctance potentially for people to be involved or not? Or is it full steam ahead?
It's completely the opposite, Greg. It's really good. I mean, there's a huge appetite and demand out there. Again, perhaps in cycling, it's the fact that the whole exercise thing through lockdown has really driven it. I think we all probably know how much there's been a boom in cycling and how hard it is to get bikes and parts. So that's good for us. But I think across events generally, our event in 11 days' time, it's called the Top of the Gorge Activity Weekend. It's a National Trust concept that actually was the Top of the Gorge Festival. It couldn't happen in 2020. The festival itself can't happen again this year because of the longer planning process needed for all the camping and the socialising aspects of that. But what we've done is we organised one of the events as part of that festival. And similarly, there's somebody organising a mountain biking event, there's another company organising a raft of trail running events. So we've come together with the support of the National Trust to put on our outdoor challenge events that don't require any of that sort of camping and you know, that close proximity stuff. And each of those 3 types of events have seen massive demand. They're bigger than they've ever been, and you know, some of those events have been going for 4 years. We're only in the 2nd year with our road cycling challenge. I know the mountain bike event has been around for 4 years, and this year they've got more people taking part than they have previously, and the same for all the running races.
Well, thank you for this stage, Darren, and good luck in the coming weeks or coming days, it sounds like, and especially for good weather, of course. That will always help.
Absolutely.
But we'll have you back in a sec on the panel. But if we could bring forward our 3rd speaker now, Vicky Gardner, Director at ZiaBia Events. Morning, Vicky.
Morning, Greg. How are you?
I'm all right. I hope you're all right too. I just for those who may not know, ZiaBia nearly 10 years around now, since 2012, blend of design and event planning for corporate and charity sectors. You've kept your doors open throughout the last year, reimagining your services to deliver virtual events and conferences. Now the future of events is unwritten. There we go. You've almost got the same tag as we have with Entrepreneur. Hybrid is the way you think it will go. So tell us about the type of work that you've been able to do and also not been able to do in this time.
Okay, so pre-March last year, literally all of our events were face-to-face. We'd never really worked in digital space before. So we work as an event agency or consultancy. So we become an extension of our clients' team. So either that's the internal events team or marketing. So since March, when everything happened, we then started to deliver online because there was a need that people were still trying to deliver professional conferences to partners. If it's a marketing conference, it needed to have a professional broadcast level, or we were able to help them with different platform support and recommendations, I think, more than anything. So very much the last year, we'd say we've almost got a new business within a business. And it's a year old this June because we delivered our first online conference last June after we were working with a client that was contracted in February to actually mind the mental health charity, and they had an end of programme event that had to be delivered in June last year because it was government funded. It was an 18-month programme. It had to be celebrated and closed, and we were contracted to do that live, and then we had to take it online. So that was kind of where we learned our trade, I think, the good, the bad, the ugly, of lots and lots of research into online events to try and help with engagement.
You say lots and lots of research. There actually weren't that many out there to research. It was everyone was making it up as they were going along and trying to learn from the one last week or the one last month and build on it. And you know, as with us, I'm sure so with you. And it's when you look back at it, you think, wow, how do we get through that?
Exactly. There was a lot of industry events, so we were kind of going on and working out what were the key things for us that were going to be really important, and that was going to be technology, making sure the platform is adequate and stable, and internet connections, and the speakers were rehearsed and trained, and all of those important things. And then how you get engagement, how you get people to interact still through the platform at that time, which was very different and very new.
Well, go on then. I'm going to bounce you straight back. How do you get engagement then? What do you have to do to get it? What are your 10 top tips, or 2 at least?
Okay, so we always say you can't replicate a face-to-face event online. It's got to be mixed up. So if you normally do a 4-day conference, you're looking to downsize that into maybe 3 or 4 hours. If you are going to have it longer, make sure there's breaks. All of the speaker sessions should only be a maximum 15 minutes long, and mix up the content as well between panels, someone speaking, whether it's a video, a pre-record or an activity, but have transitions. So you're almost turning it into like a TV show with an ad break in between, where there's something for a couple of minutes that's really going to inspire people. But during the presentations, we've been using apps like Slido or social walls and things like that, where people can actually join in and engage. They can ask the questions, they can poll, they can do word clouds, and actually feel like they're involved in what's happening and have a say in the direction of how the content of the event goes.
Yeah, and going forwards, do you know, I think what's happened over time is that first of all, people thought it's going to be all that way and then all the other way, and eventually we're going to end up with some sort of blended medium. But do you think that digital or virtual at any rate is going to continue to be a significant part of your offering, and how it will be standalone virtual as opposed to hybrid?
Yeah, we think there's going to be 3 services going forward. We're actually redeveloping our website at the moment to showcase all 3 services. We've got clients this year that have gone virtual up until November, just purely virtual, which is contracted now. And we've also got people that we've got live events in. I'm actually coming to you from London today. I'm on a site visit in Camden at the Roundhouse. So we've got a real mix of things going forward. But I think the blend of a hybrid, it's something that's being talked about a lot at the moment, and it's not new within the events industry, but I think because of the way the virtual events have moved forward and how engaging they've had to be and the high level that they've had to be delivered at, it's going to change how a hybrid event is looked at, really, because you are essentially organising 2 events in one.
Yeah. Okay, and what sort of new work are you picking up? If not the exact client, but the type of areas? Are you perhaps more conference-based than before, or how's your blend of offering changed?
Interestingly, it's still very conference-based. I think we were always, because we were more in the corporate sector, it was more conferencing and awards dinners, and they seem to be linking into the same kind of event now. So I'd say we're still conferencing, but it's still a mix, like I said, of online and virtual. Most of our live events, sorry, online and live, most of our live events this year, we've actually got a fundraising awards dinner in London, which is what we're here for today. So that's a big black tie dinner with lots of entertainment and fundraising. And the other couple we've got are all normally exhibitions, conferencing, that type of event, which is similar to what we did before.
And that fundraising, without going into perhaps too much detail about it, very roughly, what's the capacity tonight or whenever it is, compared with what it might otherwise have been? How's it actually going to work? People being in a room together, socialising? Never catch it.
Oh, well, when we started working on this, we received the brief in January, and we actually had a very open conversation with the client before we submitted proposals around what may happen and what may not. So the roadmap's obviously here now, and like we said earlier, we can't really definitely say what's going to happen, whether the 21st of June or what will happen after the 21st of June and what's going to be put in place. But what we've done is we've put timelines in our project plans in terms of cut-off dates. So if we needed to transition it from a fully live event, so the venue capacity is 650 people. Clients looking at selling 640 tickets at the moment. So we're looking to sell the venue. So in September, there will be looks at to see what's happening. We're constantly monitoring the flow. And if it looks like we can't do it or it's going to be a half capacity, then we've got processes in place that will help us activate plan B or plan C. And there would be maybe like an online streaming element of the event then to turn it hybrid.
I'm somewhat disappointed you're only on plan B and plan C. In P's and Z's at this rate.
They're quite comprehensive plans.
I don't doubt it for a minute. I don't doubt the infinite particularity of your plans. Vicky, let's hold you on camera, as it were, now. Let's bring back Charlotte and Darren. There we go. Back in the room. So clearly, this has been for all your iterations, and one way or another, you are in the world of physical events, and I slightly hesitate calling Bristol Old Vic events, but it is essentially it's a coming together of people to watch something. It's clearly been an unimaginably difficult time for events, even whether you'd survive at a very fundamental level through to the complexities of rescheduling or the capacity issues, etc., etc. Let's talk about some of your learnings. You've picked up some of these before, but what have you seen elsewhere amongst other colleagues, other broadly similar organisations or businesses about the learnings from this time?
I'll start on that, Charlotte, Greg.
Please,
I think a lot of events, again, in sort of outdoor type challenge events, running, cycling, that kind of thing, obviously a lot have gone to sort of virtual alternatives, and I think that's a good thing for people to have done. I personally don't think it's the same. I think some of the others have said similarly that the real life experience, being with other people, is a big part of an event as well. But having said that, in the situation that we were in, being able to be creative, adapt, put on virtual events, and it has still given people something to look forward to, something to aim towards. I mean, with us, we had a mindset from the start that we weren't going to be beaten by the pandemic, and we actually put that out there. As soon as everything hit, we said to people, we're not going to be beaten by this, and that made us have to back that up. That helped us to stay focus to perhaps keep changing when sometimes you felt like might have been easy just to stop. But as I say, we were maybe lucky with some of our facilities that we could do that. Not everybody had that, but then they switched to virtual things, and they were definitely a good thing to do as a stopgap. But I think for the outdoor thing, I think people do miss that sort of that community aspect to it as well, particularly in our events, because we're dealing with a lot of local people. 75-80% of our participants are local anyway.
So it sounds like someone's operating some interesting mechanical.
Yeah. Let me just close the window.
Fascinating though it is, perhaps. And I guess in your world particularly, the physicality of the event is absolutely central. It is what it is. It is that challenge and that ride, typically.
Yeah, it is. And again, you can replicate aspects of it in a virtual event, but people inevitably will pick, the good weather. They may do it indoors instead of out with everything else that you get outside. But yeah, I mean, people just had to do what they had to do, I think. And some events have folded as well because they couldn't find a way even sort of through the virtual route.
And coming on from that learning point, how have you each attempted to reassure your audiences? I mean, I know at the formal end there might be, whether it's masks, whether it's possibly even sort of proof of vaccination, don't know. But at a sort of deeper level, the sense of discomfort about being, perhaps in your case, Charlotte, sitting in the dark alongside strangers is a very odd thing to do now because we haven't done it for 15 months or best part.
Yeah,
sure.
We have quite high levels of COVID security around all of our productions, not just for our audience, but also for all of the actors on stage. So because obviously there's a huge risk with putting on a show, it costs hundreds of thousands of pounds, and there's no insurance currently to protect us if someone gets COVID and someone gets COVID on stage. So we have a very high level of measures, and we've been complimented the whole time that we've been open about how secure people feel, how we've really, really adhered to all of the social distancing. We've got a really great one-way system in. There's hand washing facilities all over the place. We've talked to our audience. We've negotiated with how we get them into the space, how we get them out the space. We've got 3 different ways now. You can order drinks from your seat and bid them to be brought to you. You can pre-order everything, or you can just go out as you used to and order drinks normally. So we've just pivoted the whole way along.
Asking for a friend, will that in the process of ordering from your seat continue, do you think, in the real world, 2022, whatever?
Yeah, right. We see no reason why not to. That's the great thing, is that we were quite we're quite steeped in history theatre, and sometimes you could say we're a little bit archaic in the way that we approach things. And actually what COVID has done is given us a huge opportunity to look at our business and say, right, how can we adapt and how can we be more flexible and make sure that anyone that needs slightly different, we can accommodate anyone. And that's what we've learned during the pandemic, is that we can be really, really accommodating and work for our audience.
Yeah, you're touching on a deeper point there, which others have expressed as well, which is, in a sense, we've all had to learn a greater sense of empathy of what the world looks like from someone else's perspective, rather than we serve what we do because we've always done it. It's got to be seen in outward image. Take that point, Vicky, in terms of reassurance. How much of that has been an issue for some of your corporate clients about, first of all, reassurance about whether or not it can even happen, but at a more emotional level, will I be safe? Will it feel like a decent event, or will I be just so on my guard, etc.?
Yeah, and I think some of that is over the last year. Obviously, we've been doing so many virtual events. I think initially, because we were an event consultancy, our biggest learnings were around the digital side of delivering the events and platforms and knowledge around that, and then reassuring clients that we had the expertise to be able to deliver in that way. And then now talking to people now going forward about having face-to-face events, it's about, there is a confidence issue. There is a confidence issue with people wanting to be in the same place. You've got 2 very different camps. You've got the people that can't wait to do it straight, or maybe 3 can't wait to do it now. The ones that are very apprehensive might wait till next year, and then the middle who are not quite sure what to do. So more than ever, we're having to think about audience well-being, mindset, and making sure you're being inclusive to everybody, that everybody's got an opportunity still to join. And especially when it comes to a corporate conference, where maybe it's an internal team that you're inviting somewhere, you're going to have half the audience wanting to be in a room and half the audience not. So it's talking to them about how you bridge that gap, and about whether you survey them in advance to find out how comfortable your team feel with that. so that the people, but not discriminating against people that don't want to go, who then may feel forced into that situation where they're not comfortable. So there's a lot of conversation. We're finding more than ever, it's conversation, it's checking in with people, it's seeing how they feel, and you have to be sensitive to everybody at the moment to help them deliver.
Do you find, as a general point, that the larger the company, the more cautious it is, more sort of conservative in the way that it's worrying about its team or its duty of care or whatever?
Absolutely. Some of the we work with a vast range of companies throughout the UK. Some of them are big global ones based in Reading to London, and they're not even considering maybe going back to the office to October onwards this year. And if they do, it might be just for people that maybe aren't as able to work at home or drip feeding back in, whereas we've noticed that some other businesses are straight back in. So I think there is a real mix, but the larger corporates definitely a lot more cautious about what they want to do, and they're the ones that are saying we're going to stay virtual.
Let me ask you a very direct question. This relates to our own business. I'll be quite transparent about it. Do you A, recommend to clients that they sell to the maximum possible capacity and then refund if they can't fulfill that capacity, or B, sell only in stages when you know the capacity is deliverable?
That's a really interesting question, because we had that conversation with the people we were with today, and we kind of said that sell the tickets, but maybe wait to invoice until you've got a cut-off point. So then you're not, if you're doing it via an invoice or doing it through a payment link, at least then you're not taking money in that you have to then refund, because for your team, that's obviously resources and things like that, which you then need to take into time and consideration. And, you know, if you wait until you've almost got that cut-off point where you definitely know it can go ahead, or you definitely know what your capacity numbers are, it's just a smoother process for everybody, I think.
Yeah, this just to say, of course, I'm talking about the Bristol Life Awards here. It is a very live issue for us. We've had hundreds of people want to go. We haven't put tickets on sale because we can't be 100% certain of the capacity even in September. We will have better knowledge come June 14th, June 21st, I guess. We'll update, of course. Don't want to talk about that, or at least us, anymore. Let's talk about something else. Let me just have a look at this. Have you found in your offerings that the way that the lockdown has made everything local has actually accelerated your own plans and opportunities with your locale, with your immediate audiences in Bristol?
From my perspective, Greg, I think I'd say probably not, just because we're being very cautious. I think for us, the pandemic feels like it's a 2-year bump. Obviously, you know, everything last year was knocked backwards, or for a lot of people wiped out. For us, it was certainly knocked backwards. This year, we've taken the view we want to rebuild. We didn't think for a minute at the start of the year that we'd get back to our normal sort of 2019 and earlier numbers. In fact, we are, and consider that's a huge achievement to be able to do that. But that means we're treading water. We're still only doing what we did in 2019. So it's actually a 2-year effect where we did have plans. You know, we should have been adding a 4th event, for example, this year. We decided to put that back in the drawer, because it just, you know, we had no certainty that we'd be able to even deliver the 3 we already had. So we've taken a view that let's make sure we can rebuild safely and sensibly, get back up to the kind of levels that we were at before, and then move on a little bit. And for us, it's about 2022 if there's going to be any sort of significant changes in more events.
So Vicky or Charlotte, is 2022 the new 2019?
Yeah, certainly for us, we are cautiously optimistic that we may be able to increase our audience, which is a predominantly a local audience, a Bristol and a Southwest audience, if we're talking about in-person tickets. But we don't assume, we are not expecting to get up to full capacity until we hit it at sort of March 2022, if I'm honest. I mean, I might be wrong with the government restrictions lifting, but we are just a bit cautious because we think we could bump back into more restrictions come the autumn, depending on what happens with the virus. It's so unknown still, but our local audience is incredibly important to us to help us sustain even that small amount of revenue coming in for our in-person shows.
Yeah, and Vicky, your offering is more than Bristol. You mentioned the sort of Reading corridor and so on. But have you found that sense of, I don't know, pride in city of itself has been a reasonable sort of propulsive force for your business?
Oh, definitely. The amount of support. I mean, we've been networking in Bristol for many years now, and the amount of businesses we know that when they saw what was happening, we were growing and we were doing really well before them. Suddenly the pandemic came along, and just the support networks of different businesses and people that you know that reach out, and we all offer guidance and support to each other. But also we've picked up more local clients that way as well. So we've picked up 3 or 4 local Bristol businesses that maybe we didn't work with before, because things have changed, whereas they may have had a team in place before and now they don't. So we've been recommended to them as a local event support that can go in and help, and whether that's a venue, whether it's a corporate client, and charities as well. So we've definitely found that it's been a positive in that way.
By the way, I'm sure I should know this, but I'm afraid I don't. Why are you called ZiaBia?
Because we wanted to stand out and be memorable. So we chose something that didn't really mean anything, that was a bit fun, because we're all about our relationships.
And you've now freighted it with the meaning of brand, I guess. So yeah. it's Raz or whatever before. Okay, let's move on from that. Let's come to this point. It's been expressed, and it's maybe hoped for as opposed to necessarily reality, that there has been a seismic shift to more thoughtful, more collective values. One easy comparison is which is almost too facile a comparison, is what happened in 45 after the massive disruption, of course, unconscionable disruption of World War II. There was a time of greater collectivity. By that point, and how might that affect, if so, how might that affect the iteration of business which you each have?
I guess for us, you know, that sort of coming together and that shared experience and the joy that you get from being in a room with 500 other people who are sharing a similar and or a different experience to you is something that, I mean, we can't wait to have back. I mean, having 200 people in the auditorium last week for 4 nights was an incredible experience, and they sounded like they were 500 people, in fairness. And so I think, you know, an understanding that audience want to share something collectively, but also understanding that, you know, all of the people that we work with, our entire industry, that, you know, it's been a really rocky ride for everyone right across the board, and being able to celebrate the you know, emerging and re-emerging from the pandemic as a collective, you know, audience and workforce, I think is something we're really, really enjoying at this moment in time, as we're able to come out, you know, slowly, cautiously.
And I think an element of that has also been seen in some of the football or sporting events where there's been limited crowds. My God, they make even noise. It's like the existential yelp proving that they exist, disproportionately so. How about you, Darren or Vicky?
Well, I think I'd agree entirely with what Charlotte said. And again, we saw it for ourselves live last year when we moved our event to September, and we had those 600 people. And yeah, you could really sense that they were just really, really pleased, really happy to be able to do something, knowing that it was safe, obviously, but they were just pleased to be out there doing the kind of stuff they want to do. I mean, that's what events are, isn't it? It's things we all choose to do. And yeah, so we absolutely saw that. And this year, you know, our numbers are way up on that. Last year, we're getting back to normal numbers, and just through the messages we're getting and the social media stuff we're seeing, people are just really, really, really looking forward to it. I'm sure it'll be absolutely the same for the Old Vic when people can get back in greater numbers.
Yeah, there's almost something of a paradox happening, which I'm sure anyone in events, and yes, us included, would like to believe, which is precisely because we've not been able to do that which we wish to, now that we can, greater desire for it, green rush of businesses and individuals to events. You know, I hope it will actually be a faster and an easier recovery. Maybe that's pie in the sky. Do you buy that at all, Vicky? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I do agree. The appetite for people being able to get together, I agree with everything that's just been said. And I think people just you can't replicate things online. I think that, like we said earlier, there will be online events will go forward in some capacity, but the bigger networking events and sales teams getting together and things like that, you can't meet actually being in the same room as someone and having that handshake or that hug or that drink in the bar at the end of it, and that's what it's all about as well, isn't it? It's that human side of things. It's humanizing us and being able to be in the same room together. I mean, none of us can sing, but there was obviously in the car on the way up, we were so excited to be here today. And I think that's just like the excitement, and you can see it within the industry, you know, over seeing our peers within all the other events agencies and venues going back to work, people that have been furloughed for a year maybe, and they're all coming back in, and it's just so exciting. It feels like the family is kind of coming back together.
Well, so everyone watch out. Events are going to be louder, more noisy, boisterous, more happy, more whatever, but just simply full on. Let's come, I mean, I'm largely looking to take positives where we can. This is a positive disguised as a negative, so there you are. Try this. Looking back, what might you have done differently, knowing what you know now?
I don't mind going first on that one. So I think if we would have known, I think people had said to me a couple of years ago, oh, digital is going to come forward in events. And I think at the time we were like, oh, we just do live events. So we didn't really factor that into our thinking. We were like, no, live events, of course, they're never going to go anywhere. But I think if I would have thought about it, maybe at the time, I would have gone back and maybe started to look at digitalizing the business as well. So we weren't just in the live events arena, or maybe trying to diversify our services so we had a broader base to go from.
Yeah, so not so much what you might have done post March 2020, but actually pre, on reflection. That's an interesting.
Yeah, to prepare for it.
How about you, Darren or Charlotte? Anything about either the pre period or the early stage period that you'd have done differently, knowing what you know now?
I don't think there is, to be honest. Again, we're a little bit different, Greg, because we did go ahead. So it's on that. I think, you know, I'm sure the things we could have done better, but I think we did a pretty good job. Everybody after the event told us that we did, so we have to go with that. So yeah, I mean, most of it, none of us, certainly, you know, when we had lockdown one, none of us could have anticipated any of that. So I don't think there's a great deal that, you know, we have looked back, and there were definitely times we could have given up, and I'm glad we didn't do that. But yeah, perhaps it's not the right answer. I don't know, but I'm not sure there's a lot that I can think that we could have done much better. I mean, we've learned from it going forward. I mean, we're still looking, even for our event in July, the 18th of July, and then our third event is in September. I mean, we are still looking at having COVID-esque measures in place. I mean, some of the things we did in the event last year, people did say to us, well, actually starting that way worked better. So we might retain some of those elements, even if there is no sort of government obligation or guidance. So we will definitely take some aspects out of it, you know, of improvements. But yeah, I think we couldn't anticipate, but what was coming, but we got through it and did quite well, actually. So, you know, don't like too much.
It's that old phrase, you live your life forwards and you understand it backwards, I guess. And so that vein, Charlotte, when you look back, do you think there is anything you might have done differently?
You know, I guess for us, we've always been that sort of mantra of the show must go on, and everyone has to be in the theatre to enable everything to happen. And what we've discovered is that actually we can have an incredibly flexible workforce who can work from home and work in the theatre, and we never did that before. Everyone was always had to be in work, and it was very much a 5, 6, 7 day working week with really, really long hours. And actually what we've been able to do for our team is actually give them facilities to enable them to work from home, connect them up in a way that we hadn't done before, and give them a really flexible, hopefully better work-life balance, because the hours can be quite unsocial at times. And actually that's working really well. There's very few people in today, partly because it's half term, partly because people have taken some time off after a hard couple of weeks last week. But equally, about 30% of the workforce are working from home today. And actually that's a really good, because hopefully we will retain more people within the industry because we can give them a bit of a better work-life balance. So yeah, that's something we definitely, looking back, I wish we'd done that before.
Right. So here we are, we're sort of on the cusp of the second half of the year. So when you look out at the second half of 2021, how are you viewing that year, perhaps personally, but really professionally and for Bristol as a city? Where are you on the optimism threshold?
I'm towards the top end of that. I think we are coming through things. I think again, thinking about it from an events perspective, you know, I think what we've seen with the return to kind of the hospitality sector, we're going to see that kind of joy and enthusiasm and demand in events when they're allowed to come back in, completely. Understanding obviously big events like Glastonbury or the Harbour Festival, things like that are, they're massive things and need a lot of forward planning. So I understand why it's difficult for them, but certainly sort of small to medium-sized events, I'm sure they'll all be coming back just as soon as they can, and everybody's waiting to see that happen.
Yeah. Vicky, Charlotte, you optimistic about the 6 months or 18 months ahead?
Yeah, I feel cautiously optimistic is how I would put my feeling. I guess because we're inside, because we're a 500-seater theatre, plus we have a studio which seats 150, and we have an indoor venue which seats another 100. I think I'd love for it for capacity to be lifted, but I'm not 100% sure that that's going to be the case for the rest of this year and early into next year. So yeah, cautiously optimistic, I think, is how I will remain.
So you're the divider here, Vicky. We've had unalloyed optimism, cautious optimism for very natural reasons. Where do you sit?
Okay, probably more cautiously optimistic as well, to be honest. Even though I'm saying about the site inspection today, I mean, like I said, we've got the plan in place if things don't quite go to plan. I think I was talking to Debbie, who is the co-director at ZiaBia last year, and we honestly didn't think we might do anything in its full glory until 2022. So I'm optimistic that things will start to happen. I think smaller events will come back first. There will be elements of social distancing, and we'll learn as we go, and we'll just keep being there for our clients just to help them along the way, because things keep changing and we keep finding solutions. And I think within events, that's what we all do, isn't it? We keep just being there to get the best out of any situation and move it forward, but it's definitely going the right way now.
One thing that's true about all forms of events, whether virtual or actual, is that they are finite, typically in time, and we're very close to the end of our allotted hour. I wanted to ask a question to you each. It's an inward and outward question about advice. Who's given you smart advice, and what is that in this period? But also, if you had to give advice, one piece of advice, anyone considering an event, perhaps for the first time, what would it be? So what have you received, and what would you give as a piece of advice? Darren, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Certainly, we got a lot of good advice and sort of hand-holding from, as I said earlier, our council partners. North Somerset Council in particular were extremely good. So the guidance we got from them in terms of, because they were getting input from all types of events and what could work, what could be done, what couldn't be done. So we listened to what they had to say, and they helped us enormously with being able to put the event on safely. And I think I'd say that to anybody else. I mean, obviously, events works in lots of different ways, but if there are other people out there with that kind of experience, that breadth of knowledge, they're definitely worth talking to.
Charlotte, advice in or out, as it were, that you've had?
Some really brilliant advice I was given actually by an inclusion and diversity and equalities consultant recently was, it's not a race. You have to do things at the pace that works for your organisation to ensure that legacy is embedded. And I feel that that's brilliant advice. And I will think about the business as a whole. And I think, yeah, whatever changes we're going to make now and in the future, we have to do them at a pace that works for us and for our audience and everyone that works with us. And I guess with the advice I'd give out is that when you're starting out and you're looking at what your priorities are, invariably you have a lot, and I would distill them down to a maximum of 3.
Okay, well, let me boom around. What are your 3 priorities then, Bristol Old Vic?
So we had 15. This is the thing.
Oh, there
so
you go.
Like,
physician, heal thyself. I mean, really.
Exactly. So I guess for us, it's about how do we explore our digital live stream hybrid model, and who's that audience they're there, and how do we grow that, and how do we ensure financial sustainability and stability as we come through COVID and come out the other side.
Yeah. Good. Vicky, how about you? Best advice you've heard, and perhaps advice you would give? So
I think initially it was our networks that gave the best advice. We were in with groups of people that we'd known for a long time, and we ended up splintering into smaller peer groups that had some other people within the marketing sector, had our accountant in there, and a few other people. And I think just having that open network where we could share and they could share back, and we could all be honest and open, I think, with each other, that best advice came from that environment, to be honest, for us. And we learned so much and took so many hints and tips of people. And you you know, it was everybody that was affected, you know. And I think in terms of our clients going forward, I think what we say to them is, if you didn't do anything last year, you can't really not do anything this year. So we're open to conversations, because whether you're going to look at doing something virtually, whether you're doing something hybrid, or whether you want to do something live, anything is possible. And it's just having that creativity and opening those doors to unleash all of the thoughts that we can put together and brainstorm and create something magical. And I think that's what we say to people, really, just have a conversation.
Yeah, it's a question of zigging whilst others are zagging. If you see a problem, conversely, that problem is also an opportunity. If you've got applied creativity, and desire, I guess, lurks in there quite high. Anyway, we're through our hour. I would like to thank our speakers today, and we wish you absolutely all the best. The whole sort of social topography of cities, particularly Bristol, events play such a key part, and that sense of enjoyment, shared experience in whichever iteration it might be, is so vital to us. And there's a deeper point about how we connect as humans, and we've all been missing that for all that we've had this sort of ersatz version virtually, which has been a godsend and will endure in some form, of course. To our three speakers, Charlotte Geeves of Bristol Old Vic, Darren McKimm, Great Western Ride, and Vicky Gardner, ZiaBia Events Consultancy. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for you for watching, and indeed for watching on YouTube subsequently, or now, I suppose in real time. Thanks, of course, to our business club sponsor, Bevan Britain, and likewise to everyone for your support for Bristol Life. Please look out for that upcoming Bristol Life Business Surgery with Interaction, June 14th, that new workplace culture. And of course for EntreConf, our major new conference for entrepreneurs on July 1st. The future absolutely is unwritten. Good luck to you all in the coming months. This has been a Media Clash production, and this has been the latest Bristol Life Business Club. Bristol together, always. Thank you.